everybody, it's Charisma of Charisma's Corner, and we are in the Little Pink Barn, and today we are in block 8 of Star Studded, and we are in the home stretch. But this month and the very last month, in month 10, well, besides finishing, are Y seams, and so this seems to be the scary part for everybody, but it goes together pretty simply, I think. So first of all, we're going to start with the diamonds, and just to let you know that none of these fabrics are the colors in the quilt. I just don't have enough sample yardage of chicken scratch because it hasn't been delivered while I'm making these videos, that I had to use other colors. But you should be able to get the gist of the directions from that. So I went ahead and used my template to cut out my diamond shape wedges here. And again, PSA, check your test box. I've said that every month. You know the rules. So check your test box, cut out your colors. We have a light and a dark. We need 8 of these star, they're like half square, well, yeah, they're like huge half square triangles that are half stars. This is what adds the sparkle to the quilt. You can see the pink one there. That is, I think it adds so much to the quilt. It was one of my favorite parts. I really loved the way that came together. So we have 8 different ones to do, all in the color wheel of the star, and they align with the center of the star. So each one points to these wedges or half square triangles that kind of frame everything in. Okay, so we have our light and our dark here. We need to sew the rows together. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this. There's notches in the ends so that you know where to line them up. It's easier for me to lay them out so that I can keep them in order. I found that when I was just kind of sewing them together all to get them done, to get my sample done, that I had mixed up some of them. So lay it out. It just helps to keep everything a little organized. And my colors are going the opposite way of what the color. So the dark should have been here and the lights, but this was just a sample. But just letting you know, it's easy to get mixed up. So now we have our 2 sets of wedges done, and we need to make this sort of Y. And I'm going to just go ahead and turn this upside down. It makes sense for me to follow this. The diagram is on your pattern, but we don't have to mark anything. What we're going to do is take this number 1 and we're just going to sew it like you would a normal seam, and just sew the whole thing from start to finish, number 1 on this Y. So that part is done. This is seam 1 and this is seam 2. And what we're going to do with seam 2 is we are going to go ahead and lay this on like we were sewing it, like we would sew. And we're going to sew all the way to the seam. And in fact, I'm going to turn this around because it'll be easier to see. So here's our seam line right here. I'm going to sew all the way to this seam, but I'm not going to go over the seam. And then in fact, when I get to the seam, I'm just going to do a little back stitch right there. You don't want to go over the seam. You want to leave that 1/4 of an inch right there unsewn. So let's do that. Okay, so I have that, and it's not sewn. and you see that it opens like this. We have this little gap there. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. I can press it all when I'm done. I'm going to grab these ends here and then pull this kind of out and flatten it. Okay, so now you see it's completely flat. I think I got a little off on my seam right there, totally fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and just sew 1/4 inch, and then you can see right where my seam ends, and I'm just going to again sew right to that. I'm not going to sew all the way through. I'm just going to sew to where my thread ends right there and backstitch once again. I know it's hard to see, so I have my marking pen here, and I've sewn all the way to there. That's where my thread ended. So now I'm going to open this up, and now I have, you can see the mark right there. I'm going to go ahead and press this, and that Y seam should be fine. So there's my Y seam there, and there's my Y seam there. So I can cut off these little tails. Okay, so now I have 2 of these matching units, and again, I need to sew them on to a square, and then also a triangle on each end. But we're just going to do the same thing that we did. I'm going to make this Y, and I'm going to go ahead and sew this whole seam. And you want to make sure you pay attention to this. This has my 1/4 inch seam, so that looks good. I'm going to go back, make my Y. I have my Y here. See, there's the, here's my first leg, second leg, third leg. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to line up this corner, and I am going to go ahead and turn this over, and I'm going to sew all the way down to the stitch here. Not going to go over it. I don't want to go all the way. I just want to sew to the seam that I've already sewn. Back stitch. Okay, and there we have that. And now I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before. And now I'm just going to match up my end here. I'm going to match up this end. You can pin it if you want. And then sew all the way down. And when I get to my stitch right here, I'm just going to back stitch. I'm not going to go all of the way. Okay, and I know it's like really hard to see, but I went all the way. I made it to the stitch. There we have our Y seam stitched. I'm going to go ahead and press those. It's nice and flat. I didn't cut off any of my points. I'm feeling good about that. All of my star wedges are lining up, and now all I have to do is sew on my half square triangles to the ends. And again, all you have to do is line those up in the corner and sew the straight line. And you want this to hang over because of our seam allowance. Okay, and now there is our big sparkly half star. I feel pretty good about that. I think that we can accomplish this. It's not too terrifying, and it turns out so beautiful in the end, the way that it's being used. So I hope that took the fear away of the dangerous Y seam. And it's all laid out perfectly diagrammed in your pattern, which way to lay the block with the Y, which seam to go first, and all of the directions are written out about how to sew the seam, do the back stitch, and all that. But you also have this video to help you as well. So thank you for joining me for month 8. We'll get to month 9, which is going to be super simple because we wanted to give you a break in between 8 and 10. And so next month is going to be crazy easy, and so I'm giving you a little bit of a breather in between. So if you want to like and share this video, I would appreciate it. And if you want to share on Instagram, it's hashtag Star Studded Sew Along. And I am Charisma Horton on Instagram. You can also join my blog and join my newsletter at charismascorner.com. And I'll see you next month. Bye.